when you were in that assistant role, your primary job is your primary job, right? But what you really want to be doing is writing, and you want to become a writer. So it's like, how did you go about balancing those two? When did you know the timing was right? It seemed like you finessed it really well. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's like your number one job is to do the job you were hired for, and you have to really put your heart and soul, passion, time into that. I really spent the extra hours after work going through the notes with a fine tooth comb and just making sure that if I were a writer who was not in that day, that I could go back to the notes and understand exactly where we landed, make a document that was readable every day. And that's, that can be exhausting when you're sitting in the room for 8-10 hours and then you're going home and doing that. But I think I also started pitching a little bit in the room, and I would email pitches every once in a while because I knew the producer from the last show, so I felt somewhat comfortable with him. And then I, included it, but you got to test the waters too. I think we were talking about that as well. It's you have to kind of put it out there, see how they respond, and be smart about the context of all right, who is this that I'm dealing with and trying to impress, but also making sure everyone in the room knows your top priority is the show and getting the notes and getting the writers who are hired their ideas perfect first. And and also which I think making the transition from writer's assistant to staff writer, story editor and stuff, it's as the writer's assistant, when you're pitching something, you really want to keep yourself really humble, not make it seem like you think you were, your ideas were touched by God or something like that. You're I don't know about you have to be passionate about it and sell it, but also not overstep. And it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing making that transition.
I know. I wish there was some type of manual, or step-by-step process, but it really, but I mean, Laura, I think you're saying what the steps are, which is making your job that number one priority first and foremost, right? Yeah. Making sure you're there to be of service in the way that you were hired to do, and sort of make everybody else look good. Put in the extra amount of time, staying after work, or, doing your own writing on your own time away from home. How many stories have we heard about people who would get up at 4 a.m. They would write their own stuff for 2 hours and then they would go to work. That's definitely not me. But that's really what you have to do. And it sounds like you were willing to put in the work.